Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Superman Unlimited issue 13, written by Dan Slott with art by Lucas Meyer, colours by Giuliano Peritelli, and letters by Dave Sharp. Tomorrow Man's adventures continue this issue as in Hobbs Bay, two of the kryptonite scientists responsible for Beppo track their experiment to Bibbo Babowski's food truck, staying hidden nearby to ensure the chimp doesn't have superpowers before they approach. Bibbo meanwhile is just hanging out with his new friend, gifting him a Superman shirt. Their quiet lunch is soon interrupted by some goons who want to shake Bibbo down for some money. One of the men pulls a gun on Bibbo, but before he can de-escalate the situation with some bribe money, Beppo ends up biting one of the men on the arm, which causes the other goon to accidentally fire his gun and hit Bibbo in the chest. This sends the monkey into a kryptonite-induced rage, and he takes down the goons as the scientists watch, confirming Beppo does indeed have kryptonite superpowers. Attempting to leave, the scientists are heard by Beppo's super hearing and recognize them as the men who imprisoned and experimented on him, and he becomes even more angrier and attacks the men. I said in my review of issue 12, I really love that Bippo and now this new iteration of Beppo are part of the book too. At first I thought it was just going to be a bit more of a chill part of the book though. Just, Bibbo hanging out with his new monkey best friend, that he might get up to like some shenanigans a little later on, eating pierogies, just loving life. But I didn't think that Bibbo would be getting shot in his second appearance in this book and then Beppo going on some big superpowered rampage, but I guess that's how it goes when a monkey gets injected with kryptonite. Meanwhile, at the Kent residence, Jon is plagued by night terrors of ULTRAMAN, who intends for Jon to be broken down by the volcano he has imprisoned him in, so he may mold him into a loyal lieutenant for himself. ULTRAMAN holds Jon under the burning lava as he wakes from the night terror, finding himself thrashing and destroying his room, and he's unable to stop. Lois rushes in to try and help her son, but thanks to his superpowers, there isn't anything she can do but wait for it to die down, really wishing that Clark was there to help her. Across town, Tomorrow Man tries to help a party boat that's sinking, but the patrons all think thanks to his new ominous masked costume, he's a villain there to rob them, which I guess people would assume that this new guy turning up in Metropolis with a dark full face mask that makes it look like he's constantly scowling, he's got the bat scowl. I guess that would make people think that, yeah, you are a villain. I do like that Scott does point out that pretty much all of Metropolis's heroes don't really wear masks. There's only a handful that do, and they usually make known that they aren't villains. The ones I can think of are like Guardian or Alan Scott whenever he appears in Metropolis every now and then. Jon decides not to deal with the explanation of why he's wearing this mask and just decides to rescue the people, knowing that he can't take the mask off since people will recognize him as Superman, the son of Kal-El. And now with the Super Son now back, that could cause some timeline problems because they also know the Super Son as well. Jon suddenly hears his mother whistling as Krypto speeds by, responding to the whistle. Krypto speeds through the apartment wall and goes to the aid of Jon, laying over the boy to stop his thrashing. While he does indeed help Jon, Krypto is still very wary of the boy, growling at him, which makes me think that something is indeed up with Jon. And if you couple that with the stuff we saw just before with ULTRAMAN and him mentioning how he wanted to turn Jon into a lieutenant of his right-hand man, I think there's a little bit something going on here, and I bet that that's going to be the twist. That this isn't the Jon that Tomorrow Man thought it was. This is like an Earth 3 variant, that the fourth dimensional demon who gave him this reward for beating him, dumped on him because it's like a prank. I absolutely see that could be where it's going. All of these things are being set up. That being said, those could all be just red herrings, which again is another very valid reasoning. These could all just be red herrings, and Tomorrow Man wants to assume the worst because he's still having to deal with Master Tiz and all of that sort of stuff, and you could see it as like, oh, there is definitely something going on here. Like, this demon wouldn't just give me something out of the good graceness of its heart. But I do think there is something wrong with this Jon, and there is setup for that whole, this could be an Earth 3 Jon, because in World's Finest there was hints that Superwoman was pregnant with Ultraman's son, and if that's the case, then this could definitely be an Earth 3 variant of Jon who is evil and is just acting like Superboy to, try and invade Earth or something. Tomorrow Man soon arrives, figuring Krypto had this handled, but thought he would come by since he expected Jon would have some problems, being he was pulled from a terrible time in his life. Lois cottons on to the fact that Tomorrow Man seems to know a lot about Jon, but the hero waves it away as him being a time traveler, and he's seen situations like this before. Okay, so yeah, Lois is definitely going to figure out who Tomorrow Man is, if she hasn't already, and I think that could actually lead to a really nice moment between mother and son, with Jon realizing instead of being Tomorrow Man forever now, he can go back to being Jon, because, that's who he is. I'm sure there is going to be some sort of story there between those two characters, especially because of how Slott writes the characters here, where Lois is very suspicious of Tomorrow Man, and rightly so. He's a weird time traveler who just turned up, but I think she's going to notice that that's her son. Tomorrow Man thinks that Jon needs to let off some energy and go on an adventure or two with him, but before Lois can object, she gets a Daily Planet alert about a superpowered monkey rampaging through Hobbs Bay. Tomorrow Man takes that as his cue, asking Jon to join him, and the two race off as Lois takes the remote call from the Daily Planet, trying to figure out what the hell is going on with all this monkey business. The Daily Planet coming back into the story is great. Slott really excels at the supporting cast as main cast pieces of the plot, and he's been using them really well with that old Calderon story and sort of breaking that open with those characters. And he's one of really only 2 writers at DC at the moment who's properly utilizing supporting Superman characters. The other being Mark Waid in Action Comics, who's using the Kents, Pete Ross, Lana Lang, all the people from Clark's childhood. During the call, Tina, having lived in Gorilla City her entire life, believes that she can communicate with the monkey, but advises Lois not to send any reporters into that area, since a superpowered monkey is nothing to mess with. Having listened to the news about the monkey, Superboy is excited to go on an adventure and wanting to actually help people, so much so that he ignores Tomorrow Man's warnings. Heroes arrive at the site of the monkey's rampage, finding people trapped under the rubble with their X-ray vision. Upon removing the rubble, Tomorrow Man finds the scientists from the start of the issue, recognizing them as clones of Dabney Donovan, an old school Superman villain who's good at cloning himself. Beppo suddenly attacks Tomorrow Man, who finds since Beppo has hopped up on kryptonite, he's way stronger than maybe even Superman himself. The enraged Beppo tosses Tomorrow Man away like he is nothing, turning his attention to the scared Jon. Luckily, Jon is quick to react and blasts the monkey with his freeze breath, but Beppo fires back with his own heat vision, afraid of the cold. Tomorrow Man tries to subdue the monkey as it bites him on the arm, its kryptonite-infected mouth injuring Jon and even shredding part of his inertron weave suit, something Jon thought was impossible. So this might be a bit of a stretch, but there was emphasis on the word inertron here, which is the metal that was actually encasing the kryptonite meteor that came to Earth at the start of the series and kind of set everything in motion. Superman found out that that metal came from the future, and we know Jon got his new suit from the far future thanks to those soldiers. So what if somehow he's responsible for this meteor? Like he had to send it from the future in order to trigger the series of events that would eventually lead to the story we're reading right now to, I guess, kind of ensure his own future. I'm not exactly sure why Slott decided to emphasize inertron there, but it was definitely something we have to pay attention to because he hasn't mentioned that in a couple of issues, and we know that that metal was important. Tomorrow Man is blasted back into the building where he finds a secret laboratory, the one Beppo escaped from and was trying to get back to from Hobbs Bay. Inside, he finds the other animals, all who have been freed, but Jon worries that if they are kryptonite powered too, that would spell his end, since he can barely deal with one monkey, so how's he going to deal with a kryptonite gorilla, a kryptonite snake, and a kryptonite owl as well? A bunch of new super pets would be a really cool arc to deal with, and hell, you could even make it like a little mini-series. We recently had that fantastic Crypto mini-series from Ryan North, and you could do some really cool stuff where you get Crypto, Streaky, Comet, some of the other Superman family pets involved as they try and help superpowered creatures, live in the world or, become heroes themselves. That would be like a really neat little light book. It doesn't have to be world-ending events or anything. Just, a little bit slice of life book about the super pets would be really fun. This isn't the direction that this story is going, but it would be a really fun little event. John Mimo battles Beppo but is bitten by the monkey, causing him to fall into a rage where he demands Beppo should be afraid of him. He beats Beppo within an inch of his life, telling him that he is stronger than everyone. Luckily, Tomorrow Man returns, having freed all of the animals from the building below. He tells John that Beppo isn't a monster, he's just scared, hurt, and angry. He tells John about the imprisoned animals, and the boy thinks that they were like him, trapped and tortured with no hope of escape. John calms down, but doesn't want to let Beppo go since he's still in a rage of his own. Luckily, one of Tina's drones arrive, and the hologram of Lois and Tina tell John to let Beppo go, since they know how to help him. Tina talks with Beppo in monkey speak as Bibbo appears in the hologram, having survived the gunshot. He tells his new friend that he's all good, he just needed to rest up a bit is all. I really liked all of these plots converging here, though I do feel we needed like one more page with the Daily Planet stuff, because the Daily Planet stuff kind of came into the story and then we didn't see it until these final 2 pages. We kind of needed that one bit where the reporters figure out that Bibbo was in the area, and they find out that Bibbo was shot, and that one of them goes to see Bibbo in the hospital, and they find out that he was friends with the monkey, and that's how they bring him onto the hologram and everything. It's kind of alluded to that is what happened, but I would really have liked to have actually seen that happen on the page, because it just gives us more time with the Daily Planet stuff, something that Slott has excelled in writing in. I really like what he does with those characters and giving them the spotlight, and it just feels a little bit weird that we didn't really get that. We kind of just got like half the story there, and then they came in at the end and delivered a Deus Ex Machina, so to speak. Beppo finally calms down, and Tomorrow Man fills Lois in on the secret lab he found and how Dabney Donovan was behind it, along with the surprising amount of El Calderon green kryptonite he had in his possession. She asks how her son was able to survive so much kryptonite, but Tomorrow Man has no idea, since it wasn't even as like the kryptonite affected him at all or slowed him down. In fact, it made him even more angrier. Tomorrow Man becomes suspicious, since there is something off about John, and he appears to be more broken than even Tomorrow Man was back then. See, this has me believing that this is not John. It's an evil, multiversal, Earth 3 version of him. Since, as I said before, we had hints from Mark Waid that Superwoman in the Crime Syndicate was pregnant with Ultraman's son, and then, Ultraman was talking about, in this very issue, wanting to make John a lieutenant of his, as well as now we have this kryptonite seemingly not only not affecting John, but also driving him into a rage, something which happens when Ultraman takes kryptonite. When he eats kryptonite, snorts it, imbues it, it powers him up, it makes him stronger, and that appears to be what happened here. So I think maybe this might be an Earth 3 John, or something has changed in him where he has become an Earth 3 variant or something. Again, this is all done by a 4th dimensional imp. This could all be, Master Tiz getting the last laugh on his arch nemesis, using his younger self as the villain. That would definitely play. I could definitely see it being that way. Again, as well, it could also just all be red herring. This could all just be some big red herring that Dan Slott is throwing at us, but I'm intrigued to see where it goes. Superman Unlimited issue 13 was a pretty fun, brisk issue that allowed Slott to set up a couple of things with the return of the Super Sun on the scene and what that causes for the Tomorrow Man. I liked the Beppo storyline the most in this series. I liked it bleeding into the mainline arc, but I wished there had been a little bit more of the Beppo dynamic that we got in the last issue. That was really fun. I thought they were setting up some sort of lighter storyline with them two, getting into sort of hijinks with each other, and maybe Bibbo playing a bigger part in the rescue of Beppo and the other animals. It just kind of fell apart there at the last minute in this issue, which sucks because Slott has been doing a really good job with the Daily Planet stuff and just supporting characters in this Superman book in general. They've all been really fantastic up until here, where it just kind of wavers because the A-plot needs to really take precedence. But the A-plot itself is really interesting too, because he's setting up something really interesting with Super Sun, where maybe this isn't Super Sun, maybe this is a Earth 3 variant, some type of evil doppelganger variant. There's something going on here, and I'm intrigued to see what Slott has in store for us. I just really hope in the next issue the supporting cast get a little bit more time to shine. I'm going to give this issue a 7 out of 10.